watching NotesIn9.
Hello, and welcome to NotesIn9. I'm Dave Leedy. Episode 174, Getting Started with Custom Renderers. If you don't like how something looks, change it. Alright, in this show, the great Xpages developer Oliver Busse comes back on, and he's on Twitter, of course, and he was really one of the main guys who I believe, at least that I saw, like really brought Bootstrap to Xpages. He, very early on, I think even before the Xpages for Bootstrap project from Mark Lusink came along, he had like a framework going, and he was blogging about it, and they just really put out a lot of good information about the Bootstrap stuff, which was very helpful, and I do thank him for that. He's got a couple websites. He does things with music production, but he's also an IBM champion, and maybe most importantly, he's kind of a key member, I believe, of the OpenNTF board. But he's on OpenNTF. He's done a lot of contributions, and he's helped out. And if you are looking to help out to the community, OpenNTF is a great opportunity to do that. That's our open source hub for a lot of projects and a lot of activity going around there. So if you're not familiar with it, please check it out. If you are familiar with it, please see what you can do about contributing code, or even helping out. Even if you can't contribute code, maybe you can help out in the back end. I'm sure they're always looking for people who might have time on their hands. Okay, so what he's going to talk about today is custom renderers. And custom renderers are kind of what controls the rendering or the HTML output of a control you drag into Designer to the browser. So when you drag in an XP panel, it gets output as a div. So not only do they control that, but through this concept of custom renders, you can change that. So if you want something to behave differently, be my guest, have at it. And that's kind of like the point of this show. Now, why would you want something to behave differently? Well, it could be many reasons. I think a lot of people don't like how like a computed field outputs the HTML or an edit box, I think, in read mode. They don't like that, so you can actually change that. If you want to get into some kind of theme, like you might find on the Wrap Bootstrap site, you could actually make your own renderers that's more specific to the needs of a special theme for a corporate standard and things like that. So there's a lot of power in there. And what's really nice about it is you don't need to have some kind of fancy library to do this. You can actually do this in the NSF. And I did know this before, but I'd forgotten about that. I thought you had to go the library route. But you don't. So you can do this right in the NSF, so it's less intimidating. It's a lot easier to try. But if you do want to play around with libraries, you could download the extension library and look at the Bootstrap section and stuff. There's going to be a lot of examples of custom renderers throughout there for not only just Bootstrap, but for One UI and everything else. And I've got a couple links on the here for some just different websites that I found talking about them. Keith Strickland and at Pilia.co.uk, they're talking about it there. And quite honestly, this was a very similar topic was on this show before, which quite honestly I forgot about, from Jesse. Not that it wasn't good, because it was, but when you do so many shows and you have as bad a website as I do, you do kind of forget things. But this is, I think, worth more than a couple different introduction shows, because custom renderers does require some Java. It does require making a couple files in some different places and stuff like that. So I am a firm believer in the more examples, the merrier. So with that being said, let's go to Oliver and his great demonstration on custom renderers.
Hello, good morning, good evening, and welcome to my latest introduction to a very neat stuff you can use in your Xpages applications. And this session is called Using Custom Renderers. First, some facts about me. I am doing Notes since release 4.5. I'm a certified instructor since 2001. I was elected as an IBM champion for ICS for 2015. Thanks for all who voted for me. I'm an active member of the OpenNTF contributor sphere and an active board member, and I love X-Pages development, and I also love using frameworks, especially Bootstrap. In my little demo, I am not using Bootstrap. It's the first time in my video not using the famous Bootstrap plugin or the Bootstrap framework, but I'm using another framework, CSS framework. But before I deep dive into the details, I want to explain what the intention of this show is. Custom renderers. You may have read about it, you may have heard about it, and I know you are using custom renderers every day in your day job, because if you use plugins like the extension library or other plugins like the famous Bootstrap for X-Pages plugin, then you are using custom renderers without any notice to it. So the main intention of using custom renderers is to simplify the production of your X-Page and implementing simple markup, but at runtime producing more or less complex markup. For my demo today, I'm using not Bootstrap. I'm not using Bootstrap, but I'm using UIKit. UIKit is very similar to Bootstrap, and is also very neat and decent looking, and it has a lot of components that can be used and integrated, and it also comes with the grid system and stuff, and the core components contain also a panel like we know from the Bootstrap framework. This is how a panel looks like with some extra at the corner here. But mainly it contains about often a div element, a div container with a style class, a title, and the panel body content. So this markup is not this complex, but it is more complex than using just a div, an X-Pages div. So what I want to show you is how to simplify the usage of an X-Pages div, which is rendered as a UIKit panel. So the first step for this demo is grab your version of UIKit or any other framework. I like to use Node.js and Boa to download all the necessary stuff, and this one I'm downloading just the UIKit stuff, the whole stuff with Boa. And if you installed both Node.js and Boa, then this is easy as pie. This installs all the needed and dependent resources. I just downloaded it to here, and Boa creates in the folder you are residing in your command line, creates a folder called Boa Components, and there is this is something else. I just downloaded it before someone else. There is a jQuery folder and a UIKit folder. The UIKit itself contains the JavaScript and CSS resources, and as UIKit also utilizes jQuery, jQuery is also downloaded, and yes, you can import it in your X-Pages application. I created a Nodes database, and via the Package Explorer I imported all the stuff, the whole just downloaded Boa components into the web content folder. You can see they are created as subfolders. Here's jQuery, here's UIKit, and the jQuery sources for JavaScript. You just need the jQuery core stuff. Are sitting in that folder dist distribution, and the CSS and JS for UIKit can be found here. UIKit and UIKit minified, and there are 3 CSS files available: the default and minified version, another theme called Almost Flat and the minified version, and a gradient version and the minified one. I decided to use the gradient theme from UIKit, so I defined a theme for my application, and this theme imports, references all the resources, the external resources from that folder: the gradient CSS, the jQuery distribution, the core library, and the UIKit core library. This theme also contains some control overrides just to have a nice window title for the web pages I open, and it's computed with that formula. I have to say the source of this demo application can be found on my GitHub repository. So with that being done and also activated in the XSP applications, we are ready to start. Just some words about extensions. This application don't use extensions. Okay, no Xlib, no Bootstrap, no nothing. It's just plain using resources from the imported web content. So I just showed you the start page, the home page of my demo application. I put some content on here just for my pleasure. There's a navigation area. This is made as a custom control, which computes automatically those elements as active and inactive and stuff. And but that's not the point. The point is the implementation of those various panels here. On the starting page, you can see all the 3 variations I am using in this application. There's a basic panel which is using direct markup. The second one uses a custom control to simplify the usage and the displaying of that panel via a custom control. So the markup is defined in that control, and you just throw your content in a facet of that custom control. And the third one is the panel that uses a custom renderer. I created a demo page, a blank page, to put those various implementations on. I am starting with the direct markup example here, switching to the UIKit page, opening the markup I found on that page, choose copy, and I just place the stuff unedited on my X page. I have to throw a div on my main content facet, and all I have to do is to place the whole markup in that area and save it. And now I can preview it, and the panel will consume all the space that is available for the main content here. Nothing seen here because there's no content, just the 3 dots here, and that special element that comes with that sample markup. There is a batch element here in that corner. We can leave that alone, but we can just put some content here, straight markup for the title, and of course other content, so you can see the better result. And the panel which is displayed in the UI on the UIKit demo page uses another styling class for the panel to appear with a light gray background and that border around, which my panel does not have. So I add this styling to my direct markup. I clean that a bit up and reload my page. And so the panel should be visible in that manner. This is the way you can use the markup examples of the UI kit page directly in your X page. The second version, using a custom control, is very close to that first attempt. The custom control contains the markup that is directly stolen from the UI kit demo page, but computes some information. So the first one is shown here. It is a panel. I use the panel to have the tag name attribute available because the rendered markup should display an H3 element here, a headline. And so I chose a panel because an XP text element does not have the tag name attribute. This panel is only rendered if a custom property called title is available. I defined a custom property here, and it's just a string, and it's not a required property to be set here. So I have to check if this property is available. If it is available, then I can compute a text element here with that value. This is the panel title area. And for the body, I created a callback, a facet, an editable area. You know this. If you want to use it, just drop it on your X page. And in the visual editor, you can see there is the highlighted element here, and there is a facet called content. And in this content, you can place everything you want. I'm doing it with a div. And it says I am a custom control. And there is also the property I can set, the title custom control. So the rendering should be the same. The result should be the same. But I just simplified the usage to generate such a panel element. So this is not so new, really. This show is about using a custom renderer. What is a custom renderer? A custom renderer consists of only two components in your Notes application. First, you have to create a Java class. A renderer is defined in a Java class. You can create a Java class, and I encourage you to use packages, and you name your class what you want. The key part is here to use a superclass for your own class. The superclass we want to use is the renderer class. Please be careful when choosing the class, the superclass from the dialog, because the Domino designer will offer you two renderer classes. We don't use the Java X swing stuff here. We just use the Java X faces renderer. So by extending an existing class, you are able to add and implement some methods. I built that renderer class here. So you can see my panel, which is in that package here, extends the Java X faces renderer class. This is a superclass. So extending a superclass gives you the ability to override and implement methods. That gives you that dialog if you open the action. I just did that with 3 methods, so they are not shown in that list. If you start with a plain class, you will see the 3 methods in that list called encodeBegin, encodeChildren, and encodeEnd. Implement those 3 methods beginning with the encode children method, just leave that method alone. Okay, just use the code that is written here. The implement method action of Domino Designer will insert this line in that implemented method. It will, to be honest, insert a similar line in each of the three methods. But for this method, you can leave this implementation alone. For the other two methods, like encode begin and encode end, we have to do something. The two methods, encode begin and encode end, do the rendering. Okay? The encode begin is when an element which uses this renderer is rendered at runtime. The encode begin is the opening tag of an element. This renderer will be applied to an XPages div control. So the XPages div control is a container element, and it has a starting tag and an end tag. And after the start tag, the encode begin method will do its work, and before the end tag of the XPages div element, the encode end element will do some work. In between the container, the children are rendered, the child elements. A container contains elements, and to have them rendered also, you have to implement that method and call the super method, the method from the class where your own class is extended from, to render the container elements. Okay. The structure of the encode methods is always the same. The encode methods come with some objects here. We have the faces context and we have the component itself. The component is the one in your X page that uses this custom renderer. For example, an XPages div element. The response writer to render the markup, to render the response, is directly derived from the faces context. So we don't care about it. The response writer comes with some methods, and the most of all used method is the start element method. You can see we start an HTML element with that method, in this case a div. I have to turn back to the sample markup. This is the structure of the panel I want to render. It contains of a div. This div we omit in this case, as it is the batch element, but the div element contains an header 3 element. So it's not too complex for this example. So we start the div element. This is a very important part. The method writeAttribute adds an attribute to the rendered component in your markup. In this case, it is the attribute called ID. The value for that attribute is computed from the component object I have here, and it is directly read from the method getClientID. It is very important if your XPages div element has an ID. It is important to have this ID also in the rendered markup, and this is a XPages ID. This is a strange ID with colons inside and stuff. For example, if you want to use partial refresh, the ID is has to be defined. Another attribute is a class attribute. There you can style this div element you just started. It's not about objects. It's about the order you call those methods from the response writer. So if you start an element and add attributes and stuff, it will add attributes to that started element until you end that element. The element is ended here in that method. In this case, I just add the attribute class, and it is filled with static class names, and the class names come directly from the sample UK panel plus the UK panel box to have the panel look like this with that gray background. So this is an essential thing. If you are using properties from your component in your X pages, you have to use you have to use attributes and properties that the original component delivers. For example, an X pages div delivers a title attribute. So I now have to start with that custom renderer. Whoops. Custom rendered. This is an X pages div. And I close the tag. And you know there are properties available. Title is a property that an X pages div provides to me. Of course, you can define own attributes, but this is another story. It is more complicated to retrieve those attribute lists. You can use whatever attribute you want, but I encourage you not to use properties such as ID or rendered or loaded, because they are reserved by the X pages runtime. Title is not that hard. So the value for title is can be set to any value you like. But this is an attribute I like to examine in my renderer class. I just check if this attribute, this property is set, but just checking if it's unequal to null. If so, I am rendering the header 3 element to the response, set a class attribute, because the example uses that class also. And of course I want to provide the content of that property from title. I just write a string, the string that is provided via the property, into the markup, and directly after that I end that header 3 element. So now it's time for the body of that panel. Everything that is inside the panel should be rendered by this method. Leave this alone. Finally, I have to close the div element I started in the encodeBegin method. If you start something, you have to end something. Otherwise your markup is not valid. So the key part to get this thing working, if I save this page and I just preview it, you won't see anything. That looks like a UIKit panel. You just see the content here. It may be a title, but this browser does not support the title attribute. You have to define the custom renderer. So your renderer class is just the first step. The second one is to define this renderer in your application via the faces config. This is the part that defines the renderer in the faces config for the usage in an XSP div element, and also can be used in a panel element. So I will show you how to get those names, those so-called component family names later. The first step is to define a render kit block here. And in this render kit block you define renderer classes and custom renderers itself. First element is the component family. The component family is the name of the component you want to modify with your own render. In this case, it's a div element. The second one is the renderer type. You can name it whatever you like. I just named it UIKit.panel. And the third one is the class that defines the renderer. You can see for the second renderer I defined here, which applies to panels, XSP panels, the renderer type is of the same name and the class is 2. So my renderer can be applied to an XSP div and an XSP panel. So now, after we defined the render kit, let's use it. You may stumble upon a property called renderer type. Now this property makes sense as we defined a custom renderer type here. Remember, the renderer type name is defined here. It's the same for both elements. And so I just have to paste it and have to use it for that property. Now just have a look at this little thing. This will be rendered as a UIKit styled panel with the body content and the title attribute content, the title attribute value I just defined in my markup. So if you compare the usage of direct markup versus using the custom control, this is even more code than the direct markup I see now, and the usage of a custom renderer, you can see the difference. This panel structure is very simple, but imagine more complex structures for components of other templates, of other frameworks and stuff. Even UIKit comes with very complex structures for some of the components. Then this might become very handy to use. To show you that this is also applying to an XPages panel, oops, I just define the renderer type to that panel. It has a content and it also works as expected. The benefit of a panel is you can attach a data source to it, so displaying data of a document or a view or something. So the conclusion of this demonstration is: get familiar with the renderer class, the Java X faces render renderer class. Play around with the response writer methods, add some elements, add some attributes, play around with it, and yes, have fun with it. And if you asking yourself, how the hell did he get this component family name, it's pretty easy. If you want to create a custom renderer, you just have to think about which component you want to modify with a custom renderer, maybe an input text field. I'm doing is it like this one. I place the element that I want to modify with my renderer, create a label or a computed text or something, and compute the value for that text by accessing the element itself. In this case it's input text 1, and calling the method getStyleKitFamily. Capital S, capital K, capital F. This returns a string, and the string is the class name of that component, the full class name. In this case, input field edit box. No, excuse me, it's wrong. It's not the StyleKit family. It is, my domino designer is away. And the method is getFamily. It returns the render kit family I am interested in. So I reload the page and I can see the family name is JavaX Faces Input for that field. It's an input field, of course, rendered as a simple input type of text. So the name makes sense. So you can do with every component, with every element on your X page. To get the name, you have to define for the renderer definition in for that element, component family. In this case, if I want to define a custom renderer for that element, I just use this class name for the input, and yes, the class definition and the type definition. Type is your own name, my input renderer, and the class I don't have class name. This is how it's done. I don't have this, just have to remove it because I just receive an error message at runtime when you define something that is not available. So with that being done and that being said, I hope I encouraged you a bit to use custom renders, to have a closer look at it, because it makes your life so much easier. And if you have questions, please contact me, visit my homepage, www.oliverbusse.com, or go to my GitHub repository where you can download this sample application. And the sample application in my GitHub is called Custom Renderer Demo, and there you can find all the stuff and implementation I just showed in that video. Okay, thank you for your time. Bye bye, and code, share and learn.
And that's the demo. I thank Oliver for bringing that on. I like that he actually. At first I thought, well, I was bummed he didn't use Bootstrap because Bootstrap's so popular, but it was kind of like nice seeing another framework in there, and it all kind of works the same way in the end. So I thought that was kind of clever. So I hope he comes back on at some point with another great show. And until then, if you have any questions for me, here's my contact information, and I thank you for your time.